Now let's look at how to deal with problems that deal with multiple piles. Plastic, rubber, and fiber have some paper cranes. Plastic gives rubber and fiber some cranes to double their crane amounts. Then, rubber gives plastic and fiber some cranes to double their crane amounts. Finally, fiber gives plastic and rubber some cranes to double their crane amounts. Now, each has 24 paper cranes. How many cranes does each have at the start? Alright, so if we make a chart to figure this out, we're going to have plastic, rubber, and fiber. And we know that at the end, they each have 24. Alright, now we're going to look at what would they have before the last transfer, which is the transfer from fiber. Alright, it says, finally, fiber gives plastic and rubber some cranes to double their crane amounts. So in this last step, both plastic and rubber are going to double their amounts. So we're going to have 24, and if we're going backwards, we're going to divide by 2 instead of multiplying to see that before this step, he would have had 12. And the same thing for rubber. He would have had 24, we'd divide it by 2, and we'd find that before he doubled it, he would have had 12. Now, if fiber just gave away this many, then that means that he would have had before this step 24 plus 12 plus 12, which would have been a total of 48. Now, we're going to look at the next step, which is before the transfer from rubber. Rubber is going to be the next one to be giving things away here. So, our next step is here. Then rubber gives plastic and fiber some cranes to double their crane amounts. So, we're going to go back to plastic and say that again, he would have been getting double as much as he had from this step. So we're going to take our 12 and divide by 2 and know that before he doubled again, he would have had 6. Rubber we're not sure of yet because he's the one giving things away, so let's move on to fiber. Fiber had 48 in our last step that we just talked about, so if before that step he had half as many, then he would have had 24. So, if rubber just gave away 6 plus 24, and he was already going to have 12, then altogether he would have had 42 before this step. Now let's look at our last step. Before the transfer from plastic, here we can see that plastic gives rubber and fiber some cranes to double their crane amounts. So, if we look at rubber, rubber has 42. But before he doubled his amount to get to 42, he would have had half that many, which would have been 21. And fiber has 24, but before he had 24, he would have had half that many, which would have been 12. So, plastic has just had 6 and given away 21 and 12. Which means he would have started off with 39. So at the beginning of this entire process, plastic had 39, rubber had 21, and fiber had 12 cranes.